Have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do, or for circumstances beyond your control, only to carry that weight, unspoken, for years? This is the story of Maya Lewis, a literature teacher from Michigan whose life was cast in a perpetual twilight after the brightest light in her world dimmed. Her mother's passing had not brought the closure of grief, but an endless echo of whispers, a symphony of insinuation that she, Maya, was somehow complicit in the tragedy. It started subtly, a sidelong glance from an aunt, a sudden silence when she entered a room. Maya remembered the funeral, a blur of black suits and veiled hats, the air thick with sorrow and something else, a palpable tension that felt directed squarely at her. Her mother, Eleanor, had been the vibrant heart of their community. Her sudden decline, a swift, merciless illness, shocked everyone. Maya, her only child, had been her constant shadow, her primary caregiver in those brutal months. She had nursed her mother, held her hand, read her favorite poems, witnessing the relentless march of the disease and the agonizing helplessness of watching someone you love slip away. But in the aftermath, the narrative twisted. Her mother had suffered, yes, but hadn't Maya been there? Why hadn't she done more? The questions were never asked directly, but they hung heavy in every shared glance, every averted gaze. Maya felt herself shrink under their unspoken weight, fading into a background character in her own life, defined by a tragedy she had merely survived. Her humble apartment became her sanctuary, stacks of books her only companions. She taught with quiet dedication, pouring her heart into her students, hoping to instill in them a love for narratives that illuminated the human condition. But even in the classroom, the quiet ache persisted, a real burden of unacknowledged blame. She lived a life of quiet dignity, her shoulders often slightly slumped, her eyes holding a deep, reflective sadness that few ever bothered to truly see. She carried the weight of a secret sorrow, but also the silent strength of someone who knew the truth, even if no one else believed it. She had loved her mother fiercely, cared for her diligently, and watched her go with a broken heart, not a negligent one. Yet, the family's judgment was a cage, invisible but unbreakable. The days blurred into years, each one adding another layer to the unspoken narrative of her perceived failure. She accepted invitations to family gatherings with a heavy heart, knowing the coldness she would encounter. She yearned for warmth, for understanding, but found only the chill of judgment. Maya's existence, though filled with literature, was an isolated one. Her home, a fortress against a world that had decided her fate. She moved with quiet determination, her mind vibrant, her heart heavy. The whispers had woven themselves into her life. At school, colleagues saw a dedicated teacher, withdrawn. Her students, however, saw profound empathy, gentle wisdom. She taught them about seeing beyond the surface, about truth, ironically, truths she struggled to unveil. Maya often thought of her mother, Eleanor, whose memory was both comfort and root of pain. Eleanor, a force of nature, vivacious, a stark contrast to Maya's quiet presence. Her mother's illness had been swift and brutal. Maya had been there, every step, holding her hand, witnessing the erosion of spirit. She remembered late nights, hushed conversations with doctors, agonizing decisions for Eleanor's comfort. But the family, distant, perceived only the outcome. Their grief curdled into resentment, seeking a target. Maya became the convenient scapegoat. If only, her Aunt Caroline would often sigh dramatically, if only things had been handled differently. The implication was clear. Maya felt the weight of those unspoken words like a physical burden. This Sunday, another family dinner loomed. The annual gathering at her Aunt Beatrice's sprawling home always brought dread and faint hope. Dread because she knew the routine. Cool greetings, avoided topics, pointed questions about her solitary life. Hope, because a small part of her yearned for reconciliation, for someone to truly see her, beyond the veil of blame. She dressed simply, an unassuming dress. As she drove, the The grand old house came into view. A tremor went through her. Her jaw tightened. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her heart. She knew Aunt Caroline would be there, and her cutting remarks were inevitable. The thought of facing her aunt's scrutiny made Maya's stomach churn. She gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, a silent prayer for strength, for peace. The scent of roasting meat wafted from the open door, a poignant reminder of warmth that should have been. The air inside Aunt Beatrice's house was thick with forced cheer and aromas. Maya stepped inside, the cacophony of greetings washing over her. She offered a polite smile to Cousin David, a nod to Uncle Robert. She made her way to the large oak dining table, already laden, and took her usual seat near the window, a quiet corner. Conversations were a patchwork of trivialities. Maya contributed little. Her gaze often drifted out the window, finding solace in the oak tree, a silent witness to countless family tensions. Then, the inevitable began. Aunt Caroline, sharp-tongued, perfectly coiffed, cleared her throat, drawing attention. Her eyes, cold, fixed on Maya. "And how are things with you, Maya?" she asked, voice dripping sweetness. "Still teaching those dusty old books? It must be. Quiet." The implication hung heavy, lonely, unproductive, a life wasted. Maya felt heat rise, but met Caroline's gaze evenly. "Literature is rarely quiet, Aunt Caroline," she replied, voice calm. "It speaks of human experience, of life in all its messy, profound glory." A ripple of uncomfortable silence spread. Caroline's smile didn't falter, but her eyes narrowed. "Profound indeed," she mused. "It just seems such a shame that some talents go unfulfilled. Some lives take a turn we don't understand. I remember Eleanor always talking about your potential, Maya. Such a bright girl." The words were designed to wound, a reminder of her mother and the perceived promise Maya had squandered. This was the core of the blame. A subtle suggestion Eleanor's last days were a consequence of Maya's actions. Caroline pressed on, voice gaining performative sadness. "It was all so sudden, wasn't it? Eleanor gone too soon. We all wish we could have done more, been more present." Her gaze swept the table, drawing silent agreement. Uncle George nodded. Cousin Clara dabbed her eyes. The narrative reinforced. Eleanor a victim, Maya at fault. Maya's jaw tightened. She could feel the judgment radiating. It was an old wound, constantly reopened. She wanted to shatter the facade, demand they stop. But years of conditioning taught her silence. She carried the blame. To protest would confirm suspicions. The food on her plate seemed tasteless. A deep sadness settled over her. She closed her eyes, trying to conjure her mother's loving face. But even that felt tainted. The silence felt like a heavy shroud. The words of Aunt Caroline landed on Maya like heavy stones, adding to the crushing weight she carried. The insidious implication that her mother's suffering and passing were linked to Maya's actions was a familiar sting. But this time, it felt sharper, more public. Maya pushed her plate away. Appetite vanished. Her hands trembled. She longed to escape, to run back to her books. The air felt suffocating, laden with unspoken judgments. She felt herself shrinking, folding inward. The familiar script played out. She would endure, remain silent, leave, carrying the burden. But something shifted within her. Perhaps it was the sheer exhaustion, the years of quiet suffering culminating in this moment of raw humiliation. Or the echo of her mother's voice, not of a dying woman, but the strong, loving cadence from a time before, a voice that had always championed Maya. Maya's mind reeled back to a specific day, weeks before her mother's passing. Eleanor, frail but lucid, called Maya to her bedside. Her eyes, though dimmed, held a fierce light. "Maya, my dear," she whispered. "I know what people will say. They won't understand. They'll look for someone to blame. But you must know the truth, my love. You did everything. You are my greatest strength." Eleanor pressed a small, worn envelope into Maya's hand. "This is for you." Don't open it until you truly need it. It contains my heart and my truth. It's a shield and a testament. Maya clutched the letter, not understanding the full weight then. She tucked it away. But now, in this moment of profound despair, the memory of that letter, of her mother's deliberate, prescient act, flared like a beacon. It was her mother's final embrace, a legacy of truth. It was the shield Eleanor had promised. Maya felt a surge of righteous anger, a protective instinct for her mother's memory, which was being tarnished. She stood up, slowly, her chair scraping. Aunt Caroline paused mid-sentence. Maya's eyes, usually downcast, now held a formidable glint. "Excuse me," she said, voice gaining strength. "I need to retrieve something." She didn't wait, walked purposefully out, leaving bewildered silence. Her heart pounded, a drumbeat of defiance. The letter. It was time. A profound silence descended upon the dining room as Maya exited. The clinking of cutlery ceased, conversations halted, and every eye followed her, then turned to one another in stunned confusion. Aunt Caroline, flustered, quickly regained composure, a smirk playing on her lips. "Well," she huffed, "I suppose some people just can't handle a frank discussion, can they? Always so sensitive." Her words were meant to dismiss Maya, to reinforce the narrative of weakness. But this time, they rang hollow. Aunt Beatrice, observing with growing disquiet, frowned. She had known Eleanor well, and the thought that Maya, Eleanor's beloved daughter, had been casually maligned for so long pricked her conscience. There was an uncomfortable shift at the table, a subtle stirring of dormant consciences. The family murmured amongst themselves. But before speculation could take root, Maya reappeared. She walked back into the dining room not with slumped shoulders but with a new, almost regal bearing. Her gaze swept over the faces, lingering on Aunt Caroline, before settling on the table. In her hand, clutched almost reverently, was a small, aged envelope. Its edges were soft, its paper yellowed. The very sight of it seemed to drain the color from Aunt Caroline's face. "What is that, dear?" Uncle George asked, a hint of unease. Maya didn't answer immediately. She walked to her seat, standing beside it, holding the letter aloft for all to see. The lamplight caught the fragile paper, making it seem luminous. Her eyes, usually guarded, now held a fierce, unyielding resolve. "This," Maya declared, her voice clear and resonant, cutting through the murmurs, "is not just some old papers, Uncle George. This is a letter. From my mother, Eleanor. And she instructed me to open it only when I truly needed it." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Her gaze swept over the faces, seeing dawning comprehension, sudden fear, flicker of curiosity. "And tonight?" she continued, voice unwavering. "I believe that time has come." A collective gasp rippled. Aunt Caroline's composure visibly cracked. Her eyes darted from Maya to Aunt Beatrice, then back to Maya, her face a mask of disbelief and panic. "A letter?" Caroline scoffed, trying to regain control. "What nonsense is this? A dead woman's ramblings? Maya, dear, you're clearly distraught. We should just finish dinner." "No," Maya stated, voice firm. "We will talk now, and we will listen, all of us." With slow, deliberate movement, she carefully broke the seal. The faint sound of tearing paper echoed, a prelude to truths. Every eye was fixed on her, the air thick with anticipation. Maya unfolded the letter with deliberate, almost ritualistic care. The paper crackled softly, reverberating through the hushed dining room. She held it with both hands, tracing her mother's elegant script. A deep breath steadied her, and then, her voice clear and strong, she began to read. "My dearest Maya," she started, imbuing the space with her mother's presence. "If you are reading this, it means the time has come, and I am no longer with you. I know the grief will be immense, and I know, too, that some will seek to blame." A gasp rippled. Aunt Caroline's face went white, eyes widening. Aunt Beatrice leaned forward, compelled attention. My illness, as you know, was a thief. It came swiftly, giving us little quarter. From diagnosis, I was told the truth. My condition was aggressive, untreatable, my time limited. Maya paused, letting the words sink in, seeing the dawning horror on faces that had, for years, propagated a different narrative. My greatest wish in those final months was to live them with dignity, surrounded by the fierce, unwavering love of my daughter. And Maya, you gave me that, and more. Maya's voice swelled, but she pushed through, her gaze unwavering. You, my precious girl, were my constant companion, my nurse, my confidant, my strength. You researched every possible avenue, even when I told you it was futile. You sacrificed your own life to be by my side, day and night. You held my hand, you read to me, you whispered comfort. The words painted a vivid picture of Maya's devotion, a stark contrast to subtle accusations. There were no hidden truths, no missed opportunities, no what-ifs that could have changed the inevitable. I made the conscious decision, with doctors' support, to choose comfort over prolonged, agonizing treatments. Here, Maya looked up, eyes meeting Aunt Caroline's directly. Aunt Caroline, her mother's words continued, I know you often spoke of aggressive measures, even when medically unadvised. But my choice, made with my beloved daughter and medical team, was to embrace peace. Maya honored that choice with strength and grace. Aunt Caroline recoiled. Her facade crumbled. Other family members shifted uncomfortably, guilt palpable. My passing was not a failure of care, but a testament to a life lived fully, a death faced with courage, supported by the purest love. Maya was my rock, my beacon. Any insinuation otherwise is a cruel distortion of truth, a disservice to my memory. The letter continued, detailing Eleanor's financial arrangements, leaving her inheritance to Maya, recognizing her dedication. It spoke of profound respect for Maya's quiet strength. The words flowed, a river of truth washing away years of lies. The words of Eleanor's letter hung in the air, potent and undeniable. A truth bomb dropped amidst the dinner. Aunt Caroline, who had maintained shaky composure, now visibly trembled. Her face, usually composed, was contorted with shock, anger, and a terrifying realization. This is preposterous, she stammered, attempting to interrupt. She was clearly delirious. This is some fabrication. But Maya, eyes blazing, did not falter. She raised a hand, silencing Caroline. My mother, Maya stated, voice resonating with authority, was never delirious. She was lucid, courageous, and deliberate in every word she wrote. This letter was witnessed, notarized, and kept safe for a moment exactly like this. The mention of notarization, a legal validation, sent a fresh wave of shock through the room. Uncle Robert coughed nervously, avoiding eye contact. Cousin Clara looked utterly distraught. Aunt Beatrice, however, remained riveted, face pale, but gaze steady on Maya. Her perception, usually clouded, was now painfully clear. She had dismissed Maya's quiet suffering too long, influenced by Caroline. The letter continued, addressing specific family members by their actions. To those who chose to stand afar, to judge from ignorance, I leave only the hope that one day you will understand compassion. My daughter carried the burden of my illness, not just physically, but emotionally, while others chose to interpret events through their own anxieties and prejudices. This was a direct accusation, cutting through polite indifference. Maya read with controlled fury, her voice a conduit for her mother's powerful, posthumous defense. The words were simple, yet devastating. My greatest sorrow in these last days was not my impending death, but the knowledge that my child, who gave me everything, might be left to bear an unjust weight. My final wish is for the truth to prevail, for my Maya to be seen for the light she truly is, not the shadow others cast upon her. The air grew heavy with unacknowledged guilt. Family members, once quick to nod with Caroline, now looked down, faces etched with shame. Cousin David looked up at Maya with a glimmer of apology. Aunt Caroline, desperate, made one last attempt. "This is a private matter, Maya. You shouldn't be airing such things. It's disgraceful," she hissed, voice cracking. But her words lacked conviction. It was Aunt Beatrice who spoke next, voice surprisingly strong, cutting through Caroline's protestations. "Silence, Caroline," she commanded. "We have been silent for too long. Let her finish." Maya looked at Aunt Beatrice, a flicker of surprise and hope igniting. This was the first time anyone had actively stood up for her. It was a moment of profound shift, signaling that the truth, long buried, was finally penetrating hardened hearts. The letter, Eleanor's final act of love, was doing its work. Maya's gaze, steady and unwavering, met Aunt Beatrice's. A silent acknowledgement passed between them. A recognition of truth, and perhaps, a mutual understanding of years of quiet complicity. Aunt Caroline, stunned by Beatrice's sharp rebuke, visibly deflated, her shoulders slumping. She had lost her power. Maya returned her attention to the letter, her voice softening slightly, imbued with quiet triumph. She read the concluding lines, words that were not just a defense, but a benediction. "My beloved Maya, remember this above all. You are worthy. You are strong. You are kind. Do not let the misjudgment of others define you. Live your life fully, joyfully, for me, and know that my love and my unwavering belief in you will always be with you, a constant light even in the darkest of times." Maya finished, her voice a bare whisper. "Your loving mother, Eleanor." The letter, once a piece of paper, now felt like a living testament, an extension of Eleanor's spirit. She folded it carefully, hands trembling slightly, but now with the aftermath of monumental release. The silence that followed was different. Not oppressive, but heavy, contemplative, filled with revelation and dawning guilt. Heads remained bowed. Then, slowly, Aunt Beatrice pushed her chair back and stood. Her movement was deliberate, her gaze sweeping the table, encompassing every family member, before resting on Maya. Her eyes, which had held a severe look, now shone with unshed tears. We have been wrong," Aunt Beatrice declared, voice thick with emotion, raw and vulnerable. Her words, direct, landed with the force of a confession. All these years, we allowed a cruel narrative to take root. We allowed ourselves to believe what was convenient, what eased our discomfort. Instead of looking at the truth, instead of supporting the one person who carried the heaviest burden, she took a step towards Maya, hand reaching out. "Maya," she continued, voice trembling, "I am so deeply, truly sorry. For our blindness, for our judgment, for the pain we have inflicted upon you, unspoken, for far too long." Her apology was genuine, born of a sudden, searing understanding. It was a watershed moment, a dam breaking. Uncle Robert, usually stoic, cleared his throat and murmured, "Yes, Maya, we were wrong. Forgive us." Cousin David, emboldened, echoed, "I'm so sorry, Maya. We should have known better." Aunt Caroline, still slumped, let out a small, choked sound. She seemed diminished, her bluster gone. She looked up at Maya, her eyes holding a flicker of shame, but her power to inflict pain irrevocably shattered. The truth had disarmed her. Maya looked at her family, seeing them, perhaps for the first time, as flawed individuals. The anger receded, replaced by catharsis and fragile hope. Her mother's legacy was liberation. The silence lifted, replaced by tentative murmurs of apology, understanding. The coldness began to dissipate, replaced by tentative warmth. The immediate aftermath of Eleanor's letter and Aunt Beatrice's apology was a chaotic symphony of emotions. The polite veneer of the dinner had shattered, replaced by raw truth. Family members, some tearful, others stunned, began to approach Maya. Cousin Clara, who had always shrunk in Caroline's shadow, stepped forward, eyes red-rimmed. "Maya," she whispered, voice laced with remorse. "I am so ashamed. We truly never understood. We listened to the wrong voices. Please, can you ever forgive us?" Her words were echoed by others, a chorus of apologies, some hesitant, some earnest. Uncle Robert, a man who rarely showed emotion, placed a hand on Maya's shoulder, grip firm. "Your mother was a wise woman, Maya, and you are just like her, stronger than any of us knew." Even Aunt Caroline, stripped of her authority, seemed to falter. She didn't offer an apology, but her gaze, devoid of its usual malice, held a flicker of defeat, perhaps regret. Maya, overwhelmed by the sudden outpouring, felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. The invisible chains of blame were finally breaking. She looked at each face, seeing vulnerability, a desperate desire for reconciliation. "It is not about forgiveness, not entirely," Maya said, voice still hoarse but filled with new calm. "It is about understanding. It is about seeing the truth, even when it is uncomfortable. My mother knew this day might come. She wrote that letter not just to clear my name, but to remind us all of the importance of compassion, of looking beyond the surface, of trusting those we claim to love." She didn't embrace them with effusive warmth, for wounds were deep and would take time to heal. But her words, delivered with quiet grace, offered a path forward. The family dinner, once a dreaded ordeal, transformed into an impromptu vigil, a collective moment of reckoning. Conversations, once trivial, now turned to Eleanor, to memories of her kindness, her wisdom, her fierce love for Maya. Stories were shared, real ones this time. The family began to see Eleanor through her letter. They saw Maya not as the blamed caregiver, but as the devoted daughter, the silent protector, a woman of profound strength who had endured unimaginable pressure. The heavy atmosphere of judgment had lifted, replaced by a tentative communal healing. It was not an instant fix, but it was a beginning. Maya felt the burden on her shoulders lighten, a physical release that allowed her to stand taller, to breathe more freely. The love her mother had poured into that letter, the truth she had preserved, had finally blossomed, not just for Maya, but for the entire family, forcing them to confront their own biases and to choose empathy over accusation. The house felt different, imbued with fragile hope, a promise of a future where truth, not silent blame, would guide interactions. In the days and weeks that followed that pivotal family dinner, Maya Lewis experienced a profound shift in her life, a liberation that rippled through every aspect of her existence. The whispers had vanished, replaced by a newfound respect, a quiet acknowledgement of her strength and the truth she had held so steadfastly. Her family, once a source of deep pain and isolation, slowly began the painstaking process of mending. Aunt Beatrice became a steadfast ally, her earlier stoicism replaced by proactive warmth, striving to rebuild trust. Even Aunt Caroline, though she never offered a direct apology, changed her demeanor. Her cutting remarks ceased, replaced by a subdued silence. The truth had not only shamed her but robbed her of power. The other family members, humbled by the revelation, began to see Maya as a remarkable woman in her own right. They sought her counsel, listened to her wisdom. Maya, no longer shrinking, blossomed. Her classes, always passionate, now resonated with deeper conviction. She taught her students about the power of narrative, about empathy, about seeking truth even when uncomfortable. She encouraged them to question assumptions, to look beyond the surface. She shared the story of her mother, not the story of blame, but of Eleanor's profound love and wisdom, and the courage it took to deliver a truth that set everyone free. Her apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a home, filled with peace and quiet joy. The weight was gone, replaced by a lightness that allowed her to truly live, to embrace her own narrative, one written not by blame, but by resilience and unwavering belief in love and truth. Maya Lewis became more than a literature teacher. She became a living testament to the power of one person's quiet strength to shift an entire family's perspective, to dismantle years of ingrained prejudice, and to heal wounds that seemed irreparable. Her journey was a testament that truth, however long it hides, however painful its revelation, ultimately liberates. It reminds us that often, the most powerful voices are not the loudest, but the ones that speak from unshakable truth, from a heart that has endured, and from a spirit that refuses to be diminished. So, what silent accusations do you carry? What truths, long buried, demand to be heard in your own life? This story is a poignant reminder that compassion and understanding are active choices. They demand we question assumptions, listen with our hearts, and have the courage to stand for what is right. Is there someone in your life whose story you have misjudged? Someone whose quiet strength has been overlooked? Perhaps it is time to truly see them, to listen to the silent narratives they carry, and to help them find the voice that sets them free. Share this story, not just as a tale of triumph, but as a catalyst for deeper conversation about empathy, truth, and the enduring power of unconditional love. Remember, every individual holds a universe within them, and sometimes all it takes is one moment of courage, one act of truth, to illuminate it for all to see.